Thank you for joining us today. My colleague Tom and I will be discussing international risks and the importance of proper due diligence when engaging with new international partners. Before we dive into things, we wanted to let you know that this is a pre-recorded presentation, so although you won't be able to stop us with questions, feel free to enter them into the dialog box as we go, and we will address them live at the end of the presentation.
Hello, this is Tom Engelhardt. Thank you again for joining our virtual presentation. And thank you, Ellen, for the introduction. Over the course of 25 years with Crowley, I've consulted with Fortune 100 executive management, including general counsel and ethics and compliance organizations, audit, merger and acquisition, corporate planning. My experience in strategic consulting has given me knowledge and insight to assist these functions by providing a focus for an international investigation, and then analyzing the results to make the best decisions regarding potential engagement. We will cover many of these during our presentation today.
And my name's Ellen Mackenheimer. I'm considered the newest Crowley rep with about 5 years experience in compliance and due diligence operations. So Tom and I are going to give you a quick overview of Crowley before we dive into our presentation on risk here.
The Crowley Group was founded by data experts, primarily from Dun & Bradstreet. And in our early days, we operated as consultants, assisting companies in analyzing the purchase and use of business information, in some cases, credit reports. Our clients told us they needed better credit information and better due diligence. So we figured it out.
Where we truly separate ourselves is by putting an extra emphasis on the human element in all aspects of our business, whether that's having individual due diligence experts like Tom or myself engaging directly with our clients step by step, to our team of investigators here in Cincinnati, to our investigators on the ground across the globe. For each due diligence investigation, we have 2 teams of investigators who interact to complete the research. First is our team of experienced researchers here in Cincinnati, who are all licensed investigators, and they conduct our web-based research, as well as compile and analyze research of our in-country resources.
Over the last 25 years, Crowley has enlisted an international network of over 350 investigators well-versed in worldwide military, law enforcement, business, and government matters. Our on-the-ground investigators are represented in every continent, and we have a comprehensive understanding of local languages, laws, as well as political, social, and economic climates of the jurisdictions in which they operate. This allows for their transparent movement throughout the region, along with effective interview capabilities.
Today we're going to focus on the 2 most significant risks you face when moving into international business. Reputational risk reaches far and wide and can often be unpredictable. But if you can uncover a history of bad business practices, such as labor violations or illegal activity, in your potential intermediary's past, you can make strides to avoid stains on your reputation.
Thanks, Ellen. In addition to reputational risk, we face compliance risk. And compliance risk is really based upon the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977. Now, the act was not really followed or enforced until many years later. But basically, the FCPA makes it unlawful for persons to make payments or offer gifts or carry out any act in furtherance of such payments or gifts, directly, or indirectly to a foreign official for the purpose of influencing the decision of such official. Now, that may sound a little cumbersome, but basically it covers situations where a third party is operating in a foreign jurisdiction and they want to impress or influence the decision of a foreign official in some manner. In some cultures, that may be acceptable, but it's illegal. So, since the FCPA was passed, there are numerous other laws, such as in the UK and Brazil and even Nigeria, that were put in place to combat bribery.
Now, to mitigate these risks, a strong formalized approach to assessing your international partners is essential. And we're going to jump into that next. Of course, not all bad business practices and illegal activities can be prevented, but some red flags, commonly uncovered through proper due diligence, can help predict a company's future practices. Regulators understand that no one has an unlimited budget to thoroughly check every single one of their potential intermediaries, so the Department of Justice simply suggests taking a risk-based approach to due diligence. Next, we're going to jump into how to go about this process and properly assess an entity in order to conduct an appropriate level of due diligence. We at Crowley have clients in many different industries, from aerospace and defense to manufacturing to pharma and med device. But most start with these 4 common risk factors when assessing their intermediaries. The first is location. This is generally the most heavily weighted risk factor due to how business is conducted differently in certain regions of the world. It's historically riskier to do business in China than it is in Canada. Next, we're looking at line of business. Let's say you're working with a new supplier who's promising you the best quality production, but you have to trust them with your intellectual property. Here, you'd have to make sure that they're in good standing and worthy of your business. Whereas if you're looking to use a new freight forwarder to send 10 units of product to a new client, there's generally not as much risk involved.
Thanks, Ellen. Regarding financial exposure, it's important to assess the amount of money being transacted, and that really dictates the level of exposure you have here. Let's face it, if you're selling laundry equipment and it's a $50,000 transaction in London, the risk is much lower than if you're selling defense products to Iraq. That's pretty obvious. But the bottom line is, the larger the dollar figure, the more room there is for potential bribery and malfeasance. And that leads to the next factor, which is government affiliations. And frankly, government affiliations is a red flag. Anytime you're dealing with a government official, the amount of risk and potential exposure goes way up. So expect a tremendous amount of scrutiny regarding government interaction. Given these 4 common risk factors, they're very helpful in assessing your risk and exposure. However, we have clients that use, in some cases, just one factor. We have a defense client that uses strictly jurisdiction. And if that jurisdiction is high risk, the entire scrutiny of that transaction is considered high risk. We have other clients that use just one factor, being government affiliations. If there's a government employee involved, in their mind, that raises it to a high level of exposure.
And to your point, Tom, we even have some clients who feel the need to use up to 10 risk factors when assessing potential intermediaries. This is usually due to their various industry-specific concerns. So what we suggest is you keep this in mind as you think about what your ideal risk matrix As we just mentioned, location is generally the most heavily weighted risk factor. So here we have the CPI map, which is the industry standard guidance on corruption by jurisdiction and is updated on a yearly basis.
Each country is assigned both a ranking and a score. A risk score of 0 being highly corrupt, and a risk score of 100 being least corrupt.
Once you've used the appropriate risk factors to determine the matrix that's right for your business, you can divide your intermediaries into 3 main categories: high, medium, and low risk, to decide what level of due diligence is appropriate, some of which are shown here. An example of a low risk situation might be when we had a client look to hire a new distributor in the UK for regional representation and sales of washing machine parts. These yearly deals might add up to $250,000, if that. Given these factors, location and financial exposure, we identify this engagement as fairly low risk.
A medium risk example could be when a company hires an agent in the Middle East to manage software sales with financial exposure of, say, $1 to $2 million. From there, we go to a high risk engagement where, say, a defense company hires an agent in Eastern Europe to sell weapons systems to foreign governments. Financial exposure there, $20 to $50 million, clearly high risk.
So what you see here on your right are the industry accepted levels of due diligence and how they correspond with our 3 risk categories on the left.
To get a better understanding of the severity of compliance risk, here we have a total of $2.7 billion, which frankly is a pretty crazy number for just 1 year of enforcement actions around one anti-corruption law. However, failure to comply with recommended due diligence can expose your organization to fines and disgorgements and reputational catastrophe.
Coming back to reputational risk, this is a story of how risk was mitigated outside of the traditional pre-engagement due diligence process. When one of our clients was contacted with concerning information about one of their suppliers possibly using forced labor in China, they needed in-country resources to investigate, and they needed them fast. Our investigators were able to go to the site and uncover information that couldn't possibly be found via web search. By investigating and addressing the situation in real time, our client was able to avoid a situation that could have severely harmed their reputation. To conclude our conversation, we prepared a basic path to success for you to follow when engaging in international business.
First, we evaluate the intermediaries, as we mentioned, by taking a macro view of your current and potential engagements. From there, we assess the risk using factors we presented to determine where each intermediary lies.
Next is to conduct the appropriate level of due diligence based on risk score, keeping in mind our suggestions for high, medium, or low risk engagements. By following this path, you will be well equipped to make informed decisions in regards to international engagements and the future of your business. Thanks, everyone. We truly appreciate your participation today, and we'd love for you to join us at our virtual booth.